Welcome back. You're listening to Houston Real Estate Radio. I'm your host, Shannon Register, and every week we bring you news and information you can use on your next real estate transaction. We were talking with Mike Lesmeister of Core Lending last segment. This segment, we're going to be talking about appraisals and getting you an appraisal update. And later in the show, we've got Jim Sheffield talking about HOAs. You don't want to miss that, how to start a recreation group through your HOA. And Christy Stratton's going to be on talking from RREA Media, talking about the importance of video. So lots of different topics, interesting topics going on today. Right now, I want to get an appraisal update from Mike Bowden. Mike is the owner of Bowden Appraisal Group in the Woodlands. He sees lots of appraisals coming through his company. And we want to talk about what's going on in the market right now. What are you seeing in the way of appraisals? Are homes appraising now?
Well, thank you for having me here today. Some of the homes are having trouble appraising due to certain aspects of the market, especially in the Woodlands Spring area, due to demand. Exxon's campus coming in has created a little bit higher demand than what we are typically have.
Right.
And along with just the general attractiveness of the Woodlands and all the amenities that are there. So appraisers are having trouble making some of these values in regard to comparable sales. Mm-hmm. And that's the meat, I would say, of the appraisal. The most important part of the appraisal is the comparable sales that have occurred, and they have to have occurred before the date of the inspection. These sales need to be similar properties.
Are they mainly new construction or resales that you're seeing these issues on?
We're actually seeing them on both.
Okay.
The new home sales and the resales are both having some trouble, and not every transaction has issues like this. But we're seeing more now than we have in the past, and I've been there for many years, and this is a bit of an issue with all appraisers.
I think one of the differences, though, in this market is we're seeing buyers and sellers handling the issues a little bit differently, because in the past, the demand hasn't been there. So when the appraisal didn't come in, it was normally a seller problem, and they would have to lower their price, knowing that the property wasn't quite worth what they thought it was and what the buyer had agreed to pay for it. Now we know that the value, the demand is there, which is creating the value. So even though you can't get that appraisal as high as you want, the buyers are still moving forward with a lot of these sales. Is that right?
That's correct. If the appraised value doesn't meet the sales price, it generally points to a buyer's problem, an issue of whether they are willing to pay the difference, negotiate. The sellers typically are in a position, if the buyer does not have the ability to close a transaction, then the seller can just hold out for the next buyer and may even sell it for a higher price. And so what we are seeing is that these properties are selling and closing higher than list. And this does help the appraiser in the future, as those sales are now available in that particular market, to produce a support for a higher value.
Mm-hmm. But for the people that are buying now, they're just having to kind of pay that difference, and because the bank won't finance the difference.
They will not finance the difference. It's generally up to the buyer to come up with the funds. And many of the agents now are explaining this to the potential buyers, that if this does occur, they need to be financially ready to step up if this is the home that they really want.
And in the Woodlands, I know this is happening a little bit with new construction. The new construction, the builders are having the buyers sign a waiver saying that they do have the money to pay the difference if the appraisal comes in short, and that they are going to move forward with it. Are you seeing that very much? We're
seeing that waiver as part of the contract. Appraisers are given the contract to analyze through the appraisal process, and we do see that the agents are taking care of this ahead of time.
Now, let's talk about some of the unusual properties that are out there when someone has a property that they've done a lot of renovating on, or maybe they added some extra quarters or an apartment to it to rent out. It makes it difficult for realtors to find good comps for that property. And so then the seller, in my experience, most of the time, the seller is going back looking at how much do they have invested in it, how much have they paid for those additions, which doesn't necessarily equate to what they're going to be able to sell it for. How do you handle that as an appraiser? How do you handle these unusual properties?
Well, we're faced with that quite often. My company has been doing difficult and complex properties for years, and we do address these issues with realtors as well as property owners. What we find most of the time is that the property owner is looking to recover the cost of the items, whether it's a new barn, a remodeled kitchen, a swimming pool, and the appraiser and the market determines value. Mm-hmm. And there's usually a difference between the two. And many times property owners don't realize that. Real estate agents have trouble discussing that and basically selling that point. So an appraiser is called in as an independent third party to appraise it professionally. And my company does that on many types of very difficult properties and have been doing that for a long time. On
difficult properties, do you think it's best for the consumer or the seller to have the appraisal done before they put it on the market?
Well, I think that's best if they have a complex property, if they have invested a lot of money in the property since they purchased the property. Mm-hmm. That is generally a very important point, and also to have the appraisal completed in the same format that the next appraiser, when they sell their property from the lender, will be completing that appraisal. And that's what we do for the individual, mm-hmm. provide them with an appraisal that was completed as if we were doing it for a mortgage company.
We talked a little bit about new construction and how they're asking buyers to now sign these waivers because of the high demand. They're able to sell the houses for more than they appraise for sometimes. As far as some of the energy efficient features that are going into new home construction and some of the cost and added value that these energy efficient features bring, do you think that the appraisal process needs to have some updated changes to it to incorporate those features? Because right now it's not really accounted for in the appraisal.
Well, the appraiser, just as any other item or feature to a property, an energy efficient package to a home can enhance value. Mm-hmm. And the way that an appraiser handles that, and I do believe the same would go for a real estate agent, is to find comparable sales with an energy package that is a similar property. And therefore, the value is included in that sales price. If you only have one or two of those sales, then you find some sales without that, and then you can generally extract the value. But that's how the appraiser handles that.
Do you think sales. Most appraisers are doing that, or do you think it needs to be more something that's mandated? Are you seeing that they're doing that?
Well, the appraisals that my company does, we look at that.
Okay.
And ethically, other appraisers are required to look at those upgraded features to every property and address it in the fashion that I just discussed.
Okay, very good. All right. So right now, the houses that are not in high demand, there are pockets around the city that kind of lag. Of course, overall, it's doing great. But for those few pockets that are kind of lagging behind and that may have appraisals coming in low, just kind of as a residual effect from the past couple years recession, what would you say to those sellers? Would you recommend that they go ahead and sell the home at the little bit reduced price that meets the appraisal, or hold out? You think that those appraisal prices will catch up?
In some of those markets that you mentioned, my advice to them is, if they want to sell, not to hold out, because some of those relatively depressed areas, mm-hmm. Which have a high percentage of foreclosures mm-hmm. or short sales, are generally not going to recover quickly.
Okay.
And they just need to go ahead and move on.
Okay. All right. Tell us about your company. Do you have a website people can find you if they want to get an appraisal done?
Yes. It's BowdenAppraisal.com.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And there's on the website, there's a form to fill out. You can also call my office directly or call my cell phone. We can discuss your needs.
Okay.
Specific needs for complex properties, rural properties, manufactured homes, farm and ranch type properties, condominiums. We do all of that type of work.
Fantastic. Mike Bowden with Bowden Appraisal Group in the Woodlands. That website is BowdenAppraisal.com. We'll be right back here on Houston Real Estate Radio. And if you've got a real estate question, call us 281-882-8088. And you can find more on our website at HoustonRealEstateRadio.com.